Hello and welcome to another video on the Hobbyzone AeroScout. So today I want to cover a topic that I didn't really get into in the setup video, and I probably should have, and that was an oversight, is properly trimming the model. And there's two parts to trimming the model. The first one is trimming it actually before you even get into the air. And that means just going through the aircraft and making sure that all the control surfaces are set to neutral or aligned before you even go fly. The second part is when you go out and fly the aircraft, you may be having to adjust the trim on either the ailerons, the rudder, or the elevator to get the aircraft to fly nice and level at 50% power with safe mode off. Once you do that, you'll come back to the workbench and you'll actually transfer the trim that you put in the transmitter into the aircraft, and then recenter your trims back out on your transmitter. So let's start at the very beginning. So before you even go fly your AeroScout, the first thing you want to do is you want to check the control surfaces to make sure they're all aligned. Now, to do this, you're going to want to make sure the aircraft is actually powered up. Otherwise, you're not really going to have the control surfaces in the position that they're going to be at in the air. The other thing you're going to need is a straight edge. You can use a ruler, you can use a credit card if you're in a pinch, a business card. It just needs to be something that's flat that you can lay across the surfaces here and check their alignment. It's going to be a little bit more difficult on the elevator because it's a full flying elevator or full flying stabulator rather than a horizontal stab as well as an elevator that hinges. That makes it really easy. But there is some clues we can use on the aircraft to align that. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started here. So I got my NX8. If you have the ready to fly model, you can just go ahead and use the transmitter that came with that. I'm going to be using a Spectrum Smart Gen 2 2200 3S pack here. And I'm going to go ahead and put the pack inside the aircraft here and let it go through its initiation. Now also make sure that the throttle cut is on.
Ignition, no data. Throttle cut on.
Yep, just make sure that the throttle cut is indeed on before we go any further. You never want to have your hands operating around a propeller that could potentially fire up. So your options are you can either remove the prop entirely while you do work on the airplane, or just make sure you have the throttle cut on. Let's go ahead and plug it in. Okay. Let it do its initiation. All right. So it is done with the initiation, and before we go ahead and check the surfaces, we also want to make sure that we're not going to be in safe mode. And the reason is because when you are in safe mode, it automatically adjusts the elevator so that it wants to help promote the aircraft just to fly. When it's in non-safe mode or experience mode, the elevator then straightens back out again. So in order to trim the airplane properly, we want to make sure that we're in experience mode. So I'm going to check that right now.
Stability mode.
Okay, stability mode on my transmitter, the way I have it set up, that is safe beginner mode.
Agility mode.
Okay, and if you notice, if you watch carefully, you can actually see the
agility mode.
You can see the elevator moving. So right now we are in what my radio refers to as agility mode or experienced mode. So I'm also going to advance the throttle up to 25% just to make sure that I have AS3X active for this. There we go. Okay.
Throttle cut on.
Throttle cuts back. And that's just to make sure that AS3X and everything is set before we go any further. Next, I've just grabbed your trusty straight edge here, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay it on top of the surface here, and I'm just going to check to see, are the ailerons actually aligned? Do I see a gap between the wing surface and the aileron? You can also check underneath the aircraft as well. You can actually go underneath here like this and put the ruler underneath, and you should see that the aileron is indeed flat to the bottom of the wing. You can check it to the top of the wing too, although it's a little more difficult because you have the camber of the wing that actually is curved, where the bottom tends to be pretty flat. So if I lay that underneath here, I say, yep, I am indeed straight on there. And I can check top surface here. So yep, good. Yeah, good. Okay, on the rudder, it's a little bit more difficult here because you do have some additional surfaces to look at. So if we're looking at the, just gonna check to make sure that battery doesn't fall out here as I do this. There we go. You want to take a look at the rudder straight down from the top here, and what we can do is we can just take the straight edge here and lay it up on top, lay it up on this side. And what we really want to see is, do we see about an equal gap on each side of the rudder compared to the vertical stabulator. Also, you can just kind of visually see if the back of this and the leading edge here, are these roughly in line. So you can check your straight edge and you can put it up on top there and say, yeah. So, all right, that looks pretty straight from what I can tell. So good to go on that one. On the elevator here on the AeroScout, because it is a full flying version rather than one with a horizontal stabulator and a hinged elevator, it's a little bit more difficult. So on the vertical stabulator itself, there's little bosses that exist that stick out that kind of mimic the shape of the elevator here. So what you want to do is just align those together. So you can just kind of visually check, look down the leading edge here, and you can see the shape of this raised section here on the vertical stabulator, and you want the elevator to basically be in line with that. So once you've done that, the aircraft has been pre-flight to have the surfaces all aligned. Once again, you do that when you are in experienced mode. Now, if you do happen to find one of the surfaces is indeed off, right? Let's say that the aileron here was stuck in the upward position. So you're going to need a 1.5 millimeter Allen key here, and there's a set screw that is on the control horn of the aileron, and you simply turn that screw to loosen it. And what that does is when you loosen up that screw, there's a push rod that slides in between there's a little metal piece that receives the control rod, and the screw goes in and retains it. So you're going to loosen that up just a few turns, and then once it's loosened, you can go ahead and put your straight edge up on top here and move the elevator or the aileron up or down in order to make sure that the surface is indeed flat. Once it's indeed flat, you're going to want to go back underneath and tighten that screw back up, and then just check to make sure that after you tightened it, that it didn't move on you, and you say, yep, okay, so we're good. And you can do that easily on the aileron because the servos are mounted right on the outside of the bottom of the wing here. Just use your screwdriver. If you have to adjust the rudder or the elevator, those are actually done inside here, just behind the battery. There are spots for you to loosen up the screws here and make adjustments either way. Also, check your nose wheel too. That's another one that it's easy to forget. While not a flying surface by any means, you're going to want to make sure that this nose wheel is straight in line with the fuselage. One of the easy way to check is, see there's a mold line that runs down the center line here. Just check to see if that wheel is indeed lined up with that mold line underneath the aircraft. If that is off, you're going to want to go ahead and adjust that as well. You want to give yourself the best chance right out of the gate to be successful at flying the aircraft, and that includes making sure that your control surfaces are all set and your nose wheel, of course, is pointed in the right direction. You'd hate to go down the runway to find that nose wheel is tipped off onto one side and the aircraft is going to go veering off. Which then you're going to have to add your rudder channel in to fix that, which means your rudder is actually going to be pointed in the opposite direction you want it to be for takeoff in order to correct for the nose wheel. Or they could both be off in the same direction depending on what's going on. Either way, not necessarily what you want to get started in flying. So just take a little extra time and make sure that all those surfaces and the nose wheel is set before you go and fly. All right, so let's say you just went out to the flying field, you're ready to go fly this thing, and you're going to have to go trim the aircraft in the air. So to do that, take off. If you're not experienced enough to take off in experience mode yet, let's say this is your first RC plane, you're just getting in the hobby.
Stability mode.
Let's go back into safe beginner mode, all right? So take the aircraft off, get it high up in the air. Usually we say 3 mistakes high. That's a little bit difficult from a beginner standpoint because It's hard to tell what really is 3 mistakes high. But I would most certainly get it up high enough in the air where you can still see the aircraft really easily. So it's not a tiny dot in the air. You're at maybe, I don't know, 150, 200 feet. You want to get it up in the air high enough so that you have time to recover the airplane, but not too high that you can't see the aircraft effectively and lose sight of it. I would also recommend doing this on a very calm day, especially if you're new to flying. You want to fly with the calmest conditions possible. Don't fall into the trap of thinking you have to fly in 30-mile-an-hour winds just to prove your worth of a pilot on the internet. That's just a bad way to get started. So you're up in the air, the aircraft's flying along, you got it flying in a nice steady state, you're at 50% throttle on your transmitter, you're in beginner mode. Let's go ahead and switch it to experience mode and see what happens.
Agility mode.
All right, if the aircraft continues to fly exactly as it was in beginner mode, in experience mode, meaning it doesn't want to try to roll one way, it's not trying to pitch up, pitch down, or try to yaw, that tells you that the aircraft is pretty well trimmed. If you go right back into beginner mode,
Stability mode.
and the aircraft continues still on that existing path without really any big changes. So if you're in experience mode and the airplane is starting to do this, you go to beginner mode and it straightens it out, that tells you that the aircraft is not going to be trimmed properly. So what you're going to want to do then is go back into experience mode. So get the aircraft in a steady state. So, right? So if you're flying like a rectangular pattern, like a racetrack pattern, get the aircraft so it's coming, either one way or another, but make it so it's easy for you to figure out which direction the aircraft is wanting to roll. So kind of let off the control sticks a little bit, maintain 50% throttle, and let off the aileron and elevator and rudder, and just kind of see which way does the aircraft want to move. And then you're going to want to use these little sliders on the side here to go ahead and make your adjustments, okay? Once you make your adjustments, let off the control stick for about 3 seconds. Don't add any input into it. That kind of resets the AS3X and safe. And you can go back into...
Agility mode.
Actually, yes. So if you go to trim the airplane, you need to be in experience mode. So my apologies for that. So yeah, in experience mode, do all your trimming. Then go back into stability mode or safe beginner mode, and the aircraft should maintain that same flight path. If you see it rolling one way, yawing one way, or doing anything unusual, you should expect some change in pitch, because safe automatically tries to give you a little bit extra nose up attitude. So don't be surprised if you go into experience mode and the aircraft pitches down just a little bit. That is normal. But what you want to do is you want to really aim for 50% power, nice level, steady state of flight in experience mode. So let's say that you got that done. You had to add some, we'll say for the sake of argument, some aileron trim, right? So we have aileron trim that's in the aircraft now. So I'm just going to go ahead and simulate that, right? All right, I'm going to make it very noticeable. There we go. It's actually not as noticeable in person as it would appear with all that trim. But anyway, the idea is, let's say that the aircraft now is trimmed properly to fly in the air, and to do that, we had to move the ailerons to get the airplane to fly level, right? So what you're going to want to do then is you're going to want to come in and you can use your scale here, and you want to measure the height of the leading edge or the trailing edge of the aileron from the ground up. Okay, do that on one side, and you come over and you do that on the other. And then you're going to want to take your screwdriver here, and you're going to loosen the control rod there, the push rod. Loosen up both those set screws, and I'm going to set the trim back to 0 in the transmitter. Okay, so that's back to 0, and then you have your number that you measured from. So then you come over here, and you're going to drop the scale right down here, and then you're going to physically move the aileron until it matches the number that you recorded that was needed to give the aircraft steady state of flight. Do that on both sides, and then you're going to go ahead and tighten up the ailerons accordingly. Do the same if the aircraft wants to pitch up heavily in experience mode or dive down in experience mode. You're going to want to go through it and make those kind of changes to your elevator. And if it starts to yaw one way or the other, make the changes to your rudder. chances are really good that if you did your homework up front and you checked your surfaces out before you go, the aircraft will not need any trim in the air. But if it does, make sure you transfer that trim that you have in your transmitter to mechanical trim on the aircraft, and then recenter these back down to 0, and that gives you the base point for where the aircraft needs to be at. Aircraft are a little different. There's a little bit of manufacturing tolerances. There's a little bit of expansion and contraction that goes on with heat and humidity. So don't be surprised if your aircraft, if you trim it on a really hot day, may fly differently on a cool day. On a high humid day versus a cold, dry day, you may end up with having to make a little bit of trimming adjustments. Typically, if you have to do those, are very, very, very minor, and you can do just a couple clicks on your controller here, on your transmitter, and that's plenty to keep the aircraft flying in a good, nice, steady state in the air. But if it starts to take more than just a few clicks of trim, then by all means, you're going to want to come back through here and check your control surfaces out. But like I said, for the most part, if you set them up so they're all neutral from the very beginning, these aircraft will fly remarkably well just like that. And you should need very, 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 very little trimming at all. But if you do need it, now you know how to do it. So hopefully that helps you guys out and learn how to set up the AeroScout so that all the control surfaces are set to neutral from the very beginning, how to then trim the aircraft in the air, and then how to transfer that electronic trim from your transmitter to mechanical trim on the aircraft. And then you go ahead and reset that back to 0 in your transmitter. You will now have an aircraft that is set up and ready to go for some consistent flying and get you well on your way to becoming an aircraft pilot here in the RC community. And don't be afraid too, if you're flying at a club or you have a buddy who flies RC, someone who's more experienced, reach out to them and ask them to help you do the maiden flight and trim the airplane just to make sure that it's good. If you're a new pilot, trimming can be a little bit intimidating. So take the extra time to set the airplane up properly on the ground, and then if you need to, reach out, find a local club or find someone who can help do that first maiden, trim the airplane out. Then after that, you should be all set and good to go. If you guys got any questions, please leave them in your comments below. And if you're a new AeroScout owner and a new pilot, wishing you the best of luck and to really enjoy this hobby. This is a fantastic starter plane, and this will give you many, many, many hours of enjoyment as you begin to learn this hobby.